Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the virtual science class with lecture 23. Today's our lecture is about forces and this is chapter 17. In this chapter, we will discuss forces in action, measuring force, friction, advantages of friction and disadvantages of friction. In physics, a force is any interaction that, when unopposed, will change the motion of an object. A force can cause an object with mass to change its velocity, that is, to accelerate. Force can also be described intellectually as a push or a pull. A force has both magnitudes and directions, making it a vector quantity. You see in the diagram, the boy applied the force on a baby car, and same, a man applying a force on a wooden block. Forces in action. A force is a push or pull upon an object resulting from the object's interaction with another object. Whenever there is an interaction between two objects, there is a force upon each of the objects. Definitely, when the interaction ceases, the two objects no longer experience the force. Forces only exist as a result of an interaction. You see in the diagram that a man applied the force on a block. Open your book, page number 105, unit 17. Forces in action. Forces are acting on everything around you all the time. Is the earth dark, still and silent? No. There is movement and change around you. The chair you are sitting on is pushing up against you. The air around you is pushing down on you. Similarly, the earth's gravity is pulling you downwards. You see there is a truck. The truck is applying mechanical force to pull the trailer. Stretch is an example of pull. Twist, turn and squeeze are example of push. You can turn, twist, stretch or press on. Force is a push or a pull exerted by one object on another. When objects have forces acting on them, they may being to move, speed up, slow down or stop moving, change the direction in which they are moving. It means that when we apply the force on anything, we will push or pull the objects. On your screen, the examples are given of forces, push and pull. The boy is pulling the block and the girl is pushing the block. And the other example, man exert force on rock. In the reaction, rock also exert force on the man. Same, ground exert force on man and the man exerts force on ground. Force on the rocket and force on hot gas. Forces can be measured using a force meter, also called a Newton meter. This is the unit of the force, which is meter, and we also call it Newton meter. Force meters contain a spring connected to a metal hook. The spring stretches when a force is applied to the hook. The bigger the force applied, the longer the spring stretches and the bigger the reading. Definitely, when we increase the weight on the spring, what happens? The longer the spring stretched, and definitely the reading will be the bigger number. Measuring force. Forces can also be measured by using an instrument called the spring balance. And all of you know about it. I think most of you have this balance at your homes, the spring balance. And we measure over luggage with it. The SI unit of force is the Newton that I told you before. The unit of the force will be Newton and we represent it with a capital N. It is named after Sir Isaac Newton, who first described forces. The force of 1 Newton is a very weak force and a 10 Newton force equals to 1 kilogram. The 1 Newton force is very weak, so that's why we cannot feel it. You see these examples of spring balance. When we apply the force, the spring stretch. When we apply the more force, the spring stretch longer. Friction. Friction is a force between two surfaces that are sliding or trying to slide across each other. For example, when you try to push a book along the floor, friction makes this difficult. Friction always works in the direction opposite to the direction in which the object is moving or trying to move. It means that we have two forces directly and opposite, and the both forces are opposite to each other. Friction. If you roll a ball across a table, it will continue rolling for some distance and then come to rest. And also, if you roll the ball on the floor, what happened after some time, the ball become in rest. And you used a force to start the ball rolling, but what stopped it? Why ball stop? The ball slowed down and came to the halt because of friction. Why it's happened? It is due to the friction. The friction stopped the ball. Rub your palms together several times. What do you feel? Your palms feel warmer. Why is that so? When two objects rub against each other, they cause friction. Friction produces heat. We also learned the friction in the previous chapter, magnetism. When we rub the hand, when we rub our fingers and we bring it to the soil will, what happen? The soil or sand will stick with your fingers. Do you remember this example? Friction is a force that can be produced even if the surfaces of two objects just touch each other. Friction slows down, stops, or makes it hard for an object to move, so it can be both helpful and can also create problems for us. Friction is useful for us and also sometimes it is harmful for us. We can write on the page due to the friction. If there is no friction between the pencil and the page, we cannot write and we are not able to write anything on the page. Same if there is no friction within on the floor or the gravity, we said that the friction, earth gravity, if there is no friction there, we cannot walk or stand on the earth. Yes, here you see the example of friction, direction of motion or attempted motion. The force required to overcome friction at the instant an object starts moving from rest in a measure of static motion. You see this arrow shows the friction of the man. He applied the force on the block and the block moved. Same here. Push is equal to 1 Newton and friction is also equal to 1 Newton. It means that the friction and the force, they both are equal. When we are pushing, it means that we are applying the force over there. So force and push will be, force and friction, they both are same. Now come to the advantages of friction that I told you before, that if there is no friction, we are unable to write on a paper, we cannot walk, we cannot play. Friction enables us to walk freely. It helps to support ladder against wall. It becomes possible to transfer one form of energy to another. Objects can be piled up without slipping. You see, we can make the pile of the books and in the store, if you see the in the general store, and there are the pile of many other things. Brakes of vehicles work due to the friction. It always resists the motion, so extra energy is required to overcome it. These are the advantages of the friction. Friction plays an important role in our daily life. It is helpful to us in many ways. The friction between your shoes and the ground stops you from slipping. Frictional force helps car to move forward without slipping on the road. This is all due to the friction, because there is the friction between the tires of the vehicle and the road. So that's why car can move on the road. Friction helps you to write. The pencil would slip out of your finger if there is no friction between the pencil and your fingers. Without the friction, your pencil would run over the page, not leaving a mark. You see, the friction force helps cars to move. You see the tire of the cycle, and this arrow shows the friction. This one. You also see the friction between your shoes and the ground, and it stops us from slipping. Same here. Now, definitely also friction has a disadvantages. Friction produces unnecessary heat leading to the wastage of energy. The force of friction acts in the opposite direction of motion, so friction slows down the motion of moving objects. Forest fires are caused due to the friction between tree branches. You heard many times that there is a fire in the jungle or in the trees. They are due to the friction between the leaves of the trees. Friction can also create some problems. Anytime you want to move an object, friction can make that job more difficult. Rough surfaces have more friction than the plain and smooth surfaces. Since it creates heat, friction can become a problem when working with machines. Definitely when machine become overload, what happen? It become hot. It means that the friction create heat in the machine. Friction also tends to wear away things, causing damage. For example, the soles of your shoes, your pencil and eraser wear away due to friction. When your pencil is very sharp and you start writing on the page, after 2 or 3 lines, you see that you feel that your pencil become blunt, and this is due to the friction which is between the pencil and the page. Same when we use the eraser many times, the eraser becomes the size of the eraser becomes small. It is due to the friction because when we rub the rubber on the page, what happens? Maybe heat produced over there and the size of the rubber becomes small. Anything that you would like to slide easily would work better without friction. Here you see the example, the fire in the jungle that I told you before. This is a disadvantage of friction. Also, the example of the machine. You see the red part, orange part shows the heat between the particles of the machine. The orange part of the machine shows you the heat between the tooth of the parts of machine. It is due to the friction. Now students, take a quick review of our today's lecture. Today we learn about the force, the measuring force, the friction, advantages and disadvantages of the friction. The force is any interaction that when unopposed will change the motion of an object, and also when we apply the force on an object, maybe sometime it change the shape of the object. For example, when you cut an apple, you apply the force on apple with your knife and you see that the sharp edges into the apple, thus the force can also change the shape and the size of the body on which it acts. And also the position of the body when we apply the force on any body. It can move or it can stop. Forces can be measured using a force meter, and also we discuss about the spring balance. We measure the force with it, and in SI unit the force unit is Newton because the first scientist Sir Isaac Newton who described the force. So that's why the unit of the force is Newton. Friction. Friction is a force. This is also the type of the force between two surfaces that are sliding or trying to slide across each other. Friction always works in the direction opposite to the direction in which the object is moving or trying to move. You see that this is a rough surface and this one is the flat or smooth surface. Advantages of the friction. Due to the friction, the cars or the vehicle move forward without slipping on the road. And due to the friction, we can move the block of the wood. We apply the force and we can move it easily. And also we have the disadvantages of the friction. Okay students, the remaining articles we will learn inshallah in the next lecture. We will meet in the Zoom class. Allah Hafiz.